Welcome to the Next Level Podcast, powered by San Manuel, a series connecting you with the best minds in casino, hospitality, tribal government, and beyond. Enjoy the show.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on the Next Level Podcast. Joining me today is Eric Lohman. He's the general manager of the Monarch Beach Golf Links in Dana Point, California, and we're very, very excited to have him on the show today. Eric, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's pretty exciting to be a part of something with the word casino in it.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things we expand beyond casino, and today we can't wait to hear about your exciting background in golf. And with that, why don't you give us your 3-minute origin story? Let's start there, just so everyone out there can get a little bit to get to know you a little bit. Who's Eric?
No worries. I grew up playing golf. I grew up in the high desert in Victorville. My family moved around a lot as a young man, and so I grew up on a golf course, Spring Valley Lake in Victorville. When I was 8, I took a camp. I got fairly good. The camp was like swimming, tennis, and golf, and I could barely float. And tennis seemed to be more injury prone. But when it came to golf, I actually picked it up fairly quickly. By the time I was 10, I was ranked pretty high in Southern California as a junior golfer. That's when I started playing with like the likes of Tiger Woods and some of my peer group. By the time I was 12, I was one of the best players in California, especially for my age, and certainly one of the best in the Southern California. And then by the time I was about 14, I started playing nationally and getting ranked pretty high against the other best players in the country. I actually moved to Palm Springs, kind of where I spent my high school years. Again, I still had a pretty good run playing. I was able to get recruited by many schools. I got a scholarship to the University of Houston for a year. I transferred back to UCLA, where I should have gone all along, but that's a different story for another day. I played 4 years of college. I was all Pac-10 for 2 years. I was captain of the golf team my senior year. And then I just got into a career of golf. I kind of backdoored it a little bit. I wasn't quite sure if I was going to play professionally because I certainly was good enough. But at the very end of my collegiate career at UCLA, I got a little burnt out on the competition. And unlike some people who get burnt out on practicing or get burnt out on getting yelled at or what those things, I really just got burnt out on me internally. My mind never really cooperated with me at the highest level. Even though I was at the highest level, there was another level higher than me, and I had a hard time like overcoming that. But wasn't quite sure what I was going to do out of college. I ended up getting into golf, working at a golf club. Didn't quite think the fit was right for me, but I ran into a gentleman named Orrin Vincent who owned a company called OB Sports. Orrin and I spent a couple hours talking through my career. He knew we were family friends. He was the CEO, the partner of this company, and said, Eric, you're a good golfer. You have a great personality. You have the kind of look, and you're the type of person we're looking for in this industry. But you need to give it a shot. So I went through a management training program at a pretty young age, and I did well through that. I paid my dues, and then I was pretty young. I got hired to be a director of sales and marketing and a director of golf at a new club in Yorba Linda called Black Gold Golf Club, and that kind of let my career at a very young age kind of take off at a meteoric rate. And I've been in Orange County now for 25 years, being the general manager, director of golf of some really fine daily fee golf clubs. And that's where you'll find me today, being a golf professional and doing many things in the golf space, but not just teaching and playing, but a lot of the business side of things as well. And that's kind of what I enjoy the most now.
Oh, wow. What an exciting career story. Can I just rewind just a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back to college. So when you were in college, did you major in business, or what was your major? Or, it sounded like you got your practical management experience through OB Sports Management Program, but was there something else that you were majoring in and then business came later, or did you get some business foundational stuff in college?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say that at UCLA, I got a lot of learning that prepared me for like post college. But I'd be lying to you. UCLA. I was a pre-law. I was international relations. I thought going to business school possibly, or law school, or maybe the combination program. But when I took constitutional law, I realized I needed to read like 2,000 pages, and it was very hard to read. I could barely stay awake. I was playing competitively. I was very active in my fraternity. It just seemed like all of it was a little too much. And I wasn't quite sure that was the path I wanted to go in. But the funny thing is, when I graduated college, because the path I was really on through junior high, high school, and even college was to play professionally, it wasn't until about 12 months before I graduated that I knew internally that probably was not going to be a pathway I wanted to go in. And then I kind of just gingerly started discovering what my next path would be. And I would say that first year out of college, I did some teaching. I did some, supporting some people who had some businesses. I kind of moved around a little bit. I tried to figure out what I was going to do. And I kind of backed into golf operations and hospitality. But luckily, I was able to meet with Oren, and to say that this man was like uniquely gifted and magnanimous, and he was like the ultimate personal person. He could connect with everybody. He was gregarious. He had this passion and a salesmanship to him. He was a good-looking guy. He was a great golfer, but he had a smile on his face. And when you left talking with Oren, you left in a very positive manner. So I would give Oren, all the credit in the world for getting me into his system. And then for those 3 or 4 years that I worked right out of college for OB Sports, I got to work with some people who were amazing in marketing, amazing in sales, amazing in communications, amazing in operations. None of them were perfect, by the way. They all had their flaws. They're all friends of mine, just like I have flaws. But I was able to use that as my business school. And I think it prepared me for the future as much as anything could have prepared me for.
So it sounds like, Oren played a really big role in your life at such a young age, helped shape you and give you your foundation. There are many people out there that maybe feel that same way about others. How did that, if we could talk about that for a moment, then did Oren come to you, or did you go to Oren? And if you went to Oren, did you have a game plan, or were you just like, man, I really look up to this guy. I just would want to absorb. And then it just naturally came out that he saw a path for you. I think a lot of people don't know where to start. When they think mentors, they just think of a program, but it's not. What you described was not a program. It was a natural relationship that was built. And people probably wonder how, did that happen overnight, over years? How would you describe that?
Yeah. I mean, I'd be being very honest. Like, I wouldn't be where I am today. I would not have worked in hospitality. Most likely I would not have been a golf professional if it wasn't for that short amount of time I spent with Oren on his couch. And I can't recall exactly how I ended up there. I knew Oren already. I knew he owned a company. He owned several golf courses. I knew he had a really good reputation. And we were friends because his son was my brother's coach at the University of Washington. So we sort of had a family relationship. And I could tell you, every time I met Oren, which would have been a handful of times at sort of social gatherings, he was always like, he would look you in the eye. He would ask you how you were doing. He was inquisitive, but you left it thinking like, there's just a really good, great guy. And I'd heard that from other people. So I think somebody just recommended because I was at the precipice of quitting the hospitality, golf, maybe getting into communications, maybe going back to school, or figuring out what my next chapter would be. But meeting with Oren laid out a plan that said, you had to pay your dues. You had to learn different trades. You had to sort of give it this one last shot, but do it with a group of people who come from a different culture and a different mentality, like a mentality of trying to help people and guide them in the right direction, as compared to a company that I had worked for, which I felt like a number. I felt like I was expendable. I didn't really feel like there was much of that mentorship going on, although at the time I didn't realize that's what it really was. And I could tell you that conversation motivated me enough to give it a shot. And then I did it. And Oren was a salesman, so I think he sold it in a way that maybe wasn't exactly what I inherited, at least the way my mind thought. But then when I persevered through some of those challenges those next 2 or 3 or 4 years, I can tell you that I learned a lot about myself as a human, as a man, as a as a sales and marketing executive, which is kind of where I hang my hat. And then I kind of learned some of the other nuances as we got a little farther down the road. But if it wasn't for Orrin, heck, I could be working, who knows what I'd be doing. It'd just be something clearly different than what I'm doing today.
I think you said something in there in that part of the story that just kind of resonated. It's the second time you mentioned it, and it was the term "paying your dues," right? And I think that's a term that you don't hear often anymore. There's a lot of people that describe some folks out in the workforce as entitled, and they want to jump from 0 to 100, overnight. But here, I think your story is very interesting, right? You were a great golfer. You worked your way through the top ranks of amateur golf into collegiate. You were a top collegiate golfer, and you went to one of the best schools, in the world, right? You went to UCLA. It's a top school in the world. And despite all of that, I see it there. Despite all of that, you still had to pay your dues, right? Some would argue, wait a minute, why did he have to pay his dues? He had the best school. He had the best coaching. He had all the contacts. But yet, here you go, describing, Orrin said, you got to pay your dues. And you said, I paid my dues. What would you say to folks out there today that maybe that doesn't resonate with it, or maybe they believe they don't have to pay their dues? Like, how did paying your dues help you be a better executive, a better person, a better golf professional?
Well, I think first off, it helps you be relatable. When you end up managing a group of people, like in our industry here at the golf course, any golf course, I pretty much have done at some points, something of every job that's here. Humbles you to the point where you realize that you can sort of control your own destiny. I came from a humble background. My mom and dad worked very hard. They were humble as well. And, I think when you come, again, I was at this precipice. I had to humble myself, try something uniquely different, put myself, take a challenge, take a risk, which I did. And again, at the same exact time I'm doing these things, I had some of my friends that were Nepo babies that came for more money, or their parents were able to kind of give them sort of a step up on the rest of us. Some guys took advantage of some mentorship or opportunities where I felt like that was kind of wasn't quite the way I needed to go about it. But I can tell you when, we whether you're dealing with millennials or Gen X or whatever, we deal with a microcosm of different ages and different people from backgrounds, and we do face that. And I try to reflect back on my historical perspective to try to train them. Again, if you are Tiger Woods of business, if you are the Tiger Woods of whatever you think you are, then you might be able to skip a step or two. But very few people are in that realm. You have to learn, you have to humble yourself, you have to walk in someone else's steps. And that's the kind of message I try to tell people. Now, because I am so aware of my surroundings, and because of technology, and because of improved communication skills and the ability to create a culture and drive it, I think twofold. One, that's allowed our facilities to be more successful quicker and more than our competitive set. But I think it also allows me to, I don't expect everybody to do exactly what I did. I try to give them the pathway and then teach them how to cheat through it a little bit, right? Like, you can skip a step or two, but you have to be very smart, very calculated. You have to be driven. And what's unfortunate is I do find people, even though I think I've given them the right pathway, I've given them the best way to get through it as quickly as possible. It kind of mitigates this desire to go from hero to zero overnight. I still run into it with some people who still think they're sort of entitled to something more. But again, I think we have a good reputation here where we've proven that if you follow the pathway, you do find a better livelihood for yourselves. And again, we're not going to be perfect. Not every employee, not every trainee, not everybody who we've hired has worked out. but it's allowed us to hire a little bit better, navigate through those pathways a little bit cleaner, and recover faster if necessary. But it'll be a challenge, I think, for all of us. And I could only imagine the challenge that a company like San Manuel, the tribe, has with, thousands of employees. That's just, think about the percentage of that I have to worry about. Think about those who have to worry about more of it. But again, it's a challenge that I was willing to take. It's a challenge that I've embraced, and I'll continue to do it until I retire, because I think it's important to do what Orrin did for me, because it meant so much to me, and I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, that's fantastic. And I didn't know if you knew this. I don't think I've told you this before, but my very, very first job was when I was 13 years old. I worked at a golf course, right? And at the time, we had to pick up golf balls on the range by hand and throw them into the main grassy area where the picker could go and pick it up. And I'll never forget that. That was my very first job, and my first paycheck was like $17, right? Because it was part-time work after school, $3.35 an hour. So what was left after taxes? It was like $20 or something like that. My mom jokingly said, it cost me more in gas to take you to pick you up from work and take you to work than it is. But she realized that what I was doing was establishing, a work ethic of understanding, paying my dues, so to speak. And I didn't end up in the golf industry, but I certainly can appreciate your industry and what you do, since that's where my very first job was. And I go, this wasn't for me.
Yeah. That's my first job, and my first and only termination was when I was 15 years old, working at Mission Hills Country Club, and as the range attendant at Mission Hills. And after about a year and a half, the director of golf sat my brother and I down and said, love you boys, you're good players, but you're horrible employees. We're going to help you still play a little golf, but we're going to take you off the payroll because you eat more than you make us. So, but I learned from that. And I think the next opportunity I had, I just kept doubling down, right? To use the language that you're more familiar with. And, I'll be honest with you, the job I took after Orrin and OB Sports showed an interest in me. They said, Eric, you need to go learn the agronomy side of things. And I was 23, just graduated UCLA. I was a year after graduating. They said, you need to go up. We've got 3 or 4 courses. We could find a spot for you. You need to spend about a year on the agronomy team, because this is what some of the previous people in my position had done. And I said, what am I going to do? And how am I going to do this? And what are you going to pay me? And so I jumped in my car. I drove up to Portland, Oregon, worked at a golf course called the Reserve. I walked in. It was raining about 2 inches that day when I started. I met a guy who thought I might have been the most useless human being on the planet, because he was just forced to not hire an actual person who could do the job, who wanted to do the job. He had to hire me as a guy who was an interim trainee. The guy spent the first day I worked, the rain had stopped. The next day it was humid. He said, Eric, and there was another intern with me. They said, I can't remember his name, but he said, the 2 of you guys know what a fly mow is? And I'm from the desert. So a fly mow is a mowing unit that floats, and you have to reach and move it around. So it can mow things at a 2-to-1 grade. You can't take a mower on it, because the mower would just fall over or go down a hill. He said, there's a creek. We have a creek on the back 9 of this one golf course. He goes, I need you to start on one side, go all the way down, and then cross, and then go all the way back. And when you're done, come let me know. So 8 hours later, I'd finished mowing that creek. I couldn't walk barely the next day. And he tried every day for 3 months to get me to quit. And I didn't quit. And he eventually promoted me. I took over the accounting. I went to all the staff meetings. And the guy threw me a party when I left, because he literally said, I tried to kill you. I tried to get you to quit. I treated you as worse than any employee I've ever had. But I was not going to let that SOB get me to quit. So now when I interact with my superintendents, when I interact with my team, I come from two perspectives. I've done that work. Now, not all of it. I'm not an expert, but I've done the hard labor. I've done some of the nuanced stuff. And then my staff, who now interact with those people, I say, listen, until you've walked a day in their shoes, until you've woken up at sundown, or no sunlight, worked in 50-degree weather, and had no one talk to you, no one respect you, and just had a few people gruff at you, and then you go home and you haven't spoken a word to too many people, you realize that there's a better pathway for some people. So you better appreciate what you get and what you have. And that, to me, probably made the biggest, thing on me. Because once I got out of that and I could talk to that, most everything else I've had to do in golf has been more uphill than that.
Yeah. Wow, that's fantastic. Well, let's shift gears here for a minute. Let's talk about something more current. What keeps you motivated and energized, today? Is there something specific? Does it have to do with the business? Maybe it's something personal. Like what is your sort of motivation and energy? Where does that come from?
Well, I mean, there's a few things. I have a family, two daughters, are 17 and 14. I need to lead by example to show them. Actually, 15. My youngest's birthday's today, so she turned 15. Sutton, happy birthday, sweetheart. My parents, I think, led by example for me, and I have a twin brother, so I'll kind of say we sometimes. They worked really, really hard, gave back. Both worked for the county at some point. They were both in civil service. That's one thing. I'm, the past president of Southern California PGA of America. I realized that there's a thing called legacy. I realize the impact that somebody like myself can have on just not only my facility, but other facilities or even my peer group. I've taken a lot of pride in the amount of time that I've given back to those folks. It resonates because you can feel the power of what you can or cannot do, or how it just expands on what you're doing at a local level. I just feel like, again, I go back to the OB sports world. There's these three guys, Orrin Vincent, Phil Green, and C.A. Roberts. Chris Strauss is another one. There's four of them there. All of them have different disciplines. All of them took the time. All of them, either were forced to take me on or motivated to help me out. And they didn't have to, but all of them have taken some personal pride in sort of supporting me. And I can see how it resonates with them and myself. And I want to be able to do that for others. And, I'm not a perfect person. Like, I'm fallible. I make mistakes. I let my emotions get the best of me occasionally. But at the end of the day, I feel like I'm doing it for the right reasons. And if I can make, again, if there are people out there in the world that have a better life because of what I've done for them, just like others have done for me, that's reason alone for me to keep moving forward, at least at this age, at this part of my career.
That's great. And you love Southern California. You've been in Southern California the whole time, right?
Yeah. When you marry a woman from the peninsula of Newport Beach and she tells you have to live within a 10-mile radius of where she grew up, it kind of pigeonholes where you're going to be. If it wasn't for her, I might be somewhere else at some point. But, I love Southern California. I grew up in Southern California. I can tolerate all the negatives, and I'm semi-positive. So, like, I always, I love the weather. I love the people. I love the diversity. I love the ability to do so many different things. I love sports and golf, and even though I live by the beach, I don't really do much of the beach thing. So I'm kind of content where I am. Just trying to make a difference each and every day if I can do that. Keep moving forward.
So when you're not at the golf course, let's just put it this way: where do you go on vacation? Like, what's your let's say it's a 2-week vacation. I know 2 weeks is probably tough. You're like, what is that? Let's say it's a week, so it's a big vacation, right?
Yeah.
It's a week vacation. What's your ideal vacation? Is it a family one? Is it just you and your wife? Is it a combo? Half of it's family, half of it's just you and your wife. What do you like to do in your free time?
Well, I mean, we're very fortunate, and we have a great dynamic within our family. So it's either going to be, it could be the four of us, my wife, my two children, and myself, or it could be my in-laws. They live with us now, and we do travel with them on occasion, or it could be like another couple or family. But we're not dissimilar to. We're very fortunate to be able to go to like a Cabo San Lucas or a Hawaii. Now that my daughter's she's a little older, we're visiting some colleges for her to potentially go to. Occasionally we can sneak in something, uniquely different or fun. My wife works in the entertainment world. So through her relationships or through opportunities, we've been able to, go to New York City a lot or go to some special events or go see her when they're filming a movie or doing something within that entertainment space, which I enjoy kind of, my free time is, I kind of like to charge a lot when I'm at work. I don't waste a lot of time. And then, when I'm off campus here, I enjoy playing golf. I enjoy, watching some sports. I enjoy being a family person. I'm very supportive of my kids. They're both great athletes and they're great kids. So if I can give back to them and, and attend one of their things. I love to do that. And, I'm not a real complicated human being. I don't, I kind of, when I'm at work, I try to be in charge. When I'm home, I try to listen to my wife, and I don't really argue with what she wants to do too often. But that's kind of it. Occasionally I like to do a little gaming. Occasionally I've been known to do some of that as well, and enjoy some of that. But for the most part, it's just being, good family member, trying to focus on work when I can. And even when I'm off, I'm trying to stay engaged. And then, just trying to be a good, proper human being, if that makes sense.
That is fantastic. Work-life balance is a hot topic of conversation, and it sounds like you've been able to accomplish that with your family. Congratulations. Question: your kids, did they follow in your footsteps? So you mentioned athletics. Are they golfers? Are they in the golf team, or did they say, "Nah, that's for dad. We want to do something else"? Like what?
Well, I think
volleyball is like a big thing now, right? So
yeah, I mean, in Newport Beach, like volleyball, water polo, flag football now for girls, those are pretty huge. My one daughter is all league field hockey. She plays field hockey now because her mom played field hockey. Okay. And she's an excellent field hockey. That's a tough sport, and that's kind of the same season as golf and some other sports. But she navigated to that one. She also played softball, where she was really, really good, but she didn't really want to continue with that one. And she played soccer, but she didn't want to continue with club. But she's an amazingly good athlete. Very proud of her for what she's accomplished. Great student, volunteers, now works. She babysits, and she has another job. She keeps very busy. And like I said, she's just a great, wonderful kid. That's my daughter, Harper. My youngest, Sutton, plays water polo for like the #1 club team in the country, which is incredibly difficult. I relate more of what Sutton does now to what I used to do at the highest level. A lot of competition, not a lot of glory. Sometimes people beat you out, or you don't always get what you want, even though you're putting in the time. It'll be interesting to see if that continues for her. We hope it does, but you never know. But she just told us last week or 2 weeks ago that her ultimate goal is to be valedictorian of her high school. We had to look at her, though, and say, "Are you sure you're one of our children?" Because I can tell you, when I was a kid, once I knew I was good enough to play in college, I think I focused more on that than I did on the school side of things. But this one, my daughter is gifted in both, I think, athletics and education. So we'll see where that takes us. But no golf. They both like to every now and then placate their dad and come out and play with me. I think if those sports that they're currently playing just don't work out, they would both pivot to golf, because I think they enjoy, at least when they play with me. But right now we're okay with it. Maybe they'll get back into it down the road, but it wasn't a forced thing. Just, again, want them to be good students, want them to be good kids, and want them to, stay active and not get stuck in some of the ruts that some of the other kids do. And both of them have demonstrated to us, Lauren and I, that they're doing the right stuff. So we're good with that.
Well, excellent. And you mentioned one of them's now visiting college campuses, right? Mm-hmm. So what was have you given them advice on college? And if so, what sort of advice did you give them? Or is it not at that point yet? You're just letting them explore options, and you haven't really given any sort of advice, or maybe your strategy is not to give them advice and to let them find their own path. I mean, everyone approaches it differently.
I think we're on the Find Their Own Path program. Teenage daughters can be a little emotional and a little hard-headed, probably just like teenage boys. So, it's a dynamic that you just have to be kind of careful with, because I don't want to discourage them from doing something I'd want them to do. And I know the more I encourage them, the more they might be discouraged. So, again, with both my kids, especially my oldest, right now, it's just like being as supportive as possible. I don't know how, the people on this that watch this podcast, it's very difficult for kids coming out of high school right now. The pressure is so great. It's hard to believe it, but I do 100% agree that with the way people communicate now with social media, with the way the schools in California have become, because we're overpopulated and undersupplied with good colleges, that even the best students in California aren't going necessarily to the best schools in California. And, sometimes the secondary and third rate schools aren't what they're looking for, whether they want a big campus or a good sports program, or even a smaller campus, or a little bit more liberal arts, targeted. So at this case, it's just trying to be very supportive. Again, we're very fortunate that, I think we're going to be able to afford college. It's like a thing you really have to worry about, because if you can't go to the UC schools, or you can't get in the ones you want to go, or the state colleges, you're stuck going out of state, and now you're paying out of state tuition at a school that your kids didn't even want to go to when they were growing up. And, that's a weird thing, but we're going to support our children, all the way. Again, I transferred to UCLA from the University of Houston. My wife went to junior college and transferred to UCLA. So we both came from different pathways. Now, again, they're worried about the perception of their friends. What if my friend goes here and I don't get in, or, the pictures you take and you post where you go to school. I mean, there are things that they say where I have to check myself and say, wow, I never had to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about applying. I didn't have to worry about getting in, because my grades were good enough and I was good enough that I could sort of work around it to know that these 6 schools would take me, and these 6 schools fit the criteria that I wanted. And from there, I just got to pick where I wanted to go. And this is not going to be the case for these 2 children.
And so the $1 million question is, they're both athletes and could potentially be recruited for their athleticism and their sport. What about the name, image, likeness, the NIL, for those who aren't out there not familiar with it, and now the ability for college athletes to get paid? Is that something that your daughters are talking about? I mean, is that even a factor at this point, or is it too premature for that? Maybe senior year, that becomes more of a discussion. I mean, I hear it sometimes in some sports, but is it now propagating to other sports?
I definitely think it exists. What's weird about it? So here's the 2 ways. So social media is a thing that we all know is a dangerous thing. It's also a fun thing. It's also an education opportunity. It's entertainment. But when it comes to social media and young children, 12, 13, 14, 15, our family has made a decided effort that we were not going to promote social media. It was very limited, a lot of oversight, a lot of education, a lot of communication. So my children aren't like real public with what they do. Doesn't mean they don't enjoy a post and having people like it, but it's mostly in a small segment of people that are sort of pre-approved. I do think there are children that they know that are in their age group whose parents have no rules, restrictions. They're also a little bit on the, they're just the ones who sort of are a little loose when it comes to, morality or ethics, or however you want to look at it, right? It kind of bleeds from the top down, where we, I think, live more in a state of disciplined world, probably. So, I don't think either one of my children are looking at that as an opportunity yet. Again, both of my children aren't convinced that playing sports in college is really the right thing. They look at it as, again, a huge time commitment, a drain on potential social opportunities, or a thing that could hinder their ability to do what they want to do in academia, or prepare them for after college. I went into it like, I'm going to play a sport, and then I got convinced to join a fraternity. And I mean, if you had name, image, and likeness back in that time frame, I would have probably jumped more into that and done more of that. But again, I think my children, thankfully, as of today, which could change tomorrow, have been raised in a way where I think everything is done in a cautious manner and a thought through manner. And not to say that those people that are doing that aren't going to be benefiting from it, but I think today's age, at their age, unless you're like Tiger Woods, or you're these like exceptionally gifted athletes, that's one way to back into name, image, and likeness, because people want you to get more into it. But if you're like their level in the sporting world, your parents and you would want to really be public, and then sort of, I mean, this is more political. I think you're sexualized somewhat in that space, and I don't think my children want to be in that space right now. So I think we're okay. But I'm not knocking those who want to do it. It's just not for us.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, and that's very insightful. I mean, you never know with these types of things. It's a new factor in today's world that didn't exist just a few short years ago. Mm-mm. And I think there are many student athletes and parents who are struggling with, okay, to your point, like, where does this fit within their, belief system, right? So values-driven decision. So that's fantastic. Let's switch it up a little bit here and talk. Let's get back to golf for a moment. Golf over the last, let's call it 10 years, with Top Golf and sort of this kind of movement to make golf more social, I guess is the better way to put it. You and I had talked recently, and I recently visited some other not Top Golf type operations that were very social, golf specific in nature. It seems like golf is really transformed into a more broader appeal rather than just the tried and true traditional, let's go to the golf course and play 9 or 18 holes. Would you say that's accurate? And sort of where is the industry going? What are some of the trends that you're seeing in golf? Is there anything that catches your eye that you like be on the lookout for, or this is kind of bubbling up over here? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no worries. It's a great question. I think, gamification, and then, COVID and the social aspect of golf. And then obviously the, being outdoors and the healthy environment that we've proven that golf is a very healthy opportunity, because we're outside and we're not necessarily right on top of each other all the time, because nobody hits it in the exact same spot. We hit it all over the map. So we're never really next to each other. I think if you took the gamification, Top Golf, Golf Zone, some of those companies that, whether it's an outdoor, Top Golf type of experience, and there's several of those, Pop Stroke, I think that's like I wouldn't use the word fad, but because I do think there's some longevity and some staying within that space. But it certainly was a fad when somebody figured out, if I took the gamification of what people enjoy in that space, and you could take it to like a driving range and make the driving range experience a little bit more social, a little bit more fun, like maybe sort of bowling might have been in the 80s and 90s when it did all its gamification opportunities. We kind of stole from that model. But again, we were more outside. We made the bars a little bit bigger. We made the music a little bit louder. And then you just saw that kind of stuff, skyrocket. And now, every major metropolitan city has 2 or 3 of these types of things in different formats. And I think there's some longevity. I don't think they're all going to succeed. I don't think they're all going to be that popular. But the ones that are done right, built right, that don't focus just on golf, but focus on the full experience. And I think that's what's pushed into golf. It's the experience. Like, I grew up a traditional golfer, quiet, proper, very waspy. Kids were in their place. Adults ruled the world. Minorities and women were not treated equally. And when you look back on that, I mean, it's kind of disgusting. I mean, I think it's just not. It's not a life. Again, I grew up with 2 people who didn't live in that world, and then I learned that wasn't really appropriate. And then, all of a sudden, you saw this trend. Like, I'd say 20 years we've had a good. It started slowly, and you started seeing the integration of inequality, right? And then I think you had the gamification, which then brought a masses of people who had never thought of golf, never played golf, kind of knew of Tiger, kind of knew that this existed, but didn't know it'd be kind of fun to whack a ball towards a target and have somebody score it, have a couple libations, have a couple, eat some food. And then that pushed into COVID. And then COVID brought out everybody. COVID brought out the kids, brought out the adults, brought out the seniors, brought out people who hated golf, who couldn't remember why on earth they ever did it or why they quit. But they came back out, and then they kind of realized that, like, if more of these types of people were out and we were all kind of enjoying ourselves, that maybe it wasn't going to be quite as boring or quite as long as we kind of used to preach it. And then golf clubs like us got really good at selling 5-hole experiences, 9-hole experiences, 18-hole experiences. We told people they didn't have to keep score. We told people they could bump the ball. We gave them golf carts with GPS. We told them they could play music. We made sure that they didn't just see one beverage cart and one snack bar, but they saw it throughout the day. And that's the direction that, like, we're at a resort here at Monarch Beach Golf Links. And, that's kind of the thing. Like, over the last 10 years, I've had numerous people call and complain that people were dressed inappropriately. The music was too loud. The people were having too much fun. They didn't look like they belonged. And you know what we tell those people? We aren't for you. It's okay. Like, if you want to play in a stiff, stuffy environment, come out real early in the morning when more of the better players play. You can play faster. You can get through the day. We'll do our best to accommodate you. But a majority of the people who play golf at, like, Monarch Beach and a lot of our golf clubs aren't that serious. They're just looking to spend 2 to 5 hours, right in that 3.5-hour window is kind of the sweet spot. And they want to get some exercise, play a little golf, socialize with their friends, eat something, drink something potentially, but have a memorable experience and not have anybody bug them or bother them with rules and restrictions and parameters. And we've hung our hat on that, and it's paid off in dividends. And I think the future of golf is going to be more in that direction and less in that traditional space, because you can still find that at a private country club, but the private country club experience is changing as well. But there are way more opportunities for like the fun golf than there is for the traditional golf that are out in the marketplace today.
Wow, very interesting perspective. Very insightful. Speaking of tradition versus new, where do you stand on the Live versus PGA? Do you think that was healthy for a competing tour to be out there, or did you find that? Which side of the fence were you? Were you pro competition, or were you like one was good enough?
Well, I mean, I think history will tell a different story in maybe 10, 15 years than what like we've all kind of gone through and we're in today. It doesn't quite make sense to me that we're in the position we're in where like there's still two like semi-competing, markets. But again, this is America. It's all about like supply versus demand, and you're not restricted to do what you have to do. You could, there's always going to be like an upstart football team or league or baseball or what have you. So golf is no different. What I think is disappointing in the whole thing is that you kind of cheapen some of the better events where they don't always play together now. And you've raised the purses exponentially higher across every league, whether it's Live or PGA Tour or the European Tour or anybody who wants to have a golf tournament. The purses are so great that I think that indirectly negatively impacts the charities they would have supported or normally supported, or the consumers that they needed to come watch. Like, you needed the consumer to show up at the event, enjoy themselves, bring the kids, bring the high schoolers, bring those who aren't really that versed in golf. And I think we've outpriced some of those people now. I think Live to me is a gigantic disappointment in the way that it hasn't grown or changed. And it's still sort of like fighting. I think there is a winning solution where like the best golfers in Europe, the best players in Live, and the best players in the PGA Tour can still meet occasionally, but more than the majors. And some of those folks have lost a pathway into the majors. They won't even be in the majors. But get those folks playing more, and then maybe use like these other tours as sort of like equal opportunity for people more regionally to still compete in whatever format those things possess. I could tell you, though, the one thing that I'm more intrigued with that I believe has more staying ability. I haven't heard the dynamics and the financial impact of it yet, because I still think it's pretty raw, pretty new. It's the TGL. It's I don't even know sure what TGL stands for. It's something golf league, but it's the new show that's on ESPN. It's like Monday, Tuesday nights. It's a couple hours. It's gamification. It's the best players in the world playing on teams against each other, hitting into a simulator that's gigantic. It's crowd that's allowed to cheer, encouraged to cheer. You're starting to see a little bit more of the personality of the players. You're starting to see them kind of give each other a little grief. I think it brings out kind of like a fun aspect of golf. I think that to me is more entertaining than 90% of what you see on tour. Like the Czechoslovakia Open, the John Deere Classic, or the Live event in Chicago, unless you get lucky where some of the best players with the best personalities are playing some of the best golf courses, that product is kind of boring. Unless you're like me and you're like an addict, I don't know how the general populace can watch any of that and think like that's cool. Like they watch the Masters, they watch the U.S. Open because those are so made, like everybody knows they're coming. The marketing is all relevant, and you get the best quality of the way it's filmed. You watch one episode of TGL and you're like, it's worth an hour and a half. And that's what all they want. They just want you to zone in, tape it, watch it over 2 or 3 days and watch good people having a good time. So, that's
well, now you got me interested. I might tune in to TGL. I think you loosely told me about it one time before, but not like what you just described. So now I'm gonna go check it out just so I can see what it's all about. Sounds interesting. Any hobbies beyond golf?
You know, I'm not a big hobby guy. Like I work, I play golf still when I can. I enjoy playing with some friends. I enjoy competing with the Southern California PGA members and associates when I can. I love watching sports. You know, I'm a UCLA Bruin fan. I'm a Laker fan. I'm a Raider fan. I love, football. So, that's kind of like my thing.
Okay,
again,
so
I think my family is my hobby, if that makes sense.
okay, Laker fan. What do you think of the trade? Were you a fan?
I think I love Luka. I also liked AD. I think it pays off down the road. I think, hopefully this year the Lakers can find a way somehow to get a semi-decent center in there. And then I think, finding a way to get, if LeBron can maybe pull back some of his minutes and Luka can take over a little bit when LeBron's off the court, and then LeBron can play when Luka's off the court, and then you would see them about half the time together and they could figure out a solution. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Dalton Connect. I'm a huge fan of, AK-47 or what is it?
15.
AK-15. Sorry. Austin, thank you. I got my Ed McMahon over my shoulder. Austin Reeves. I hate the fact that Max Christie got traded because I really thought he had a future with the Lakers, and he was like one of those people that the fan base could really get behind. But I think when they find the center, whether it's this year or next year, a legitimately good center to go with those other guys, I think it's going to be fun to watch. Whether they win, they're going to have to get luckier with those draft picks and not give them away, and maybe get a guy or two to quit their team and get bought out and get some of that old, higher level guy that can come over. They can get him for the minimum. But I'll still be a Laker fan.
All right. Are you Dodger fan?
Sorry, I forgot the Dodgers. I'm a huge Dodger fan. I watch like 80% of the games at night, sitting there with my wife, working. We both sit down at the couch. We take care of our kids. They might be studying. We'll both be surfing the internet or checking on emails. And then, the game will be playing in the background. Huge Dodger fan. Huge Dodger fan.
So what do you think of the super team then? What are your thoughts?
It's crazy to think that every year they can get better. I think having the Japanese national team now, I think those three pitchers are amazing. I think the lefty out of San Diego, who they signed, that guy's a horse. I mean, how do you like that lineup on the batting? I mean, I don't know how you lose. They have like six relievers. I don't know. I think they're equipped. I just don't see how they lose, but they can. But I'm going to enjoy watching that. I mean, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Shohei Ohtani, Teoscar Hernandez. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like Max Muncy and Kiki Hernandez and some of those other guys are like your worst players, and they got dudes who could be like the 2 or 3 pitcher on their team. They have to pitch relief or they're waiting until somebody gets hurt. I don't know. It's crazy. I don't even know how you can do it, but somehow the rules are just enough able that, if you imagine that the Lakers had the same lineup as the Dodgers, like how good would that team be? It would be like Giannis, LeBron, Curry. It'd be like 7 All-Stars on your team.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you could do it. I don't think you can.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time. Certainly something we've never seen. Maybe the Yankees of 100 years ago, but
right when they all became Hall of Famers. But at the time they were like, some were gifted, some were has-been, some are. But in this case, it's like we all know they're really, really good. We all know how much money they make, and somehow they sign them all, and they're just going to pay them down the road.
Yeah, I think. It wouldn't surprise me if Major League Baseball created a rule that would make it more difficult to do that. But I think some of what you're hearing is they're saying, look, other teams could have paid them and they didn't pay, right? I mean, there's the difference between the top salary teams and the bottom is so wide. And it's by choice. Some of the folks at the bottom, some of those teams just choose not to invest that much in players. So, it's a system I think that will have to be addressed. I mean, it seemed silly. Every day there was just a new announcement. And
for the life of me, I don't think they could sign someone else tomorrow. And I don't think they just paid penalties and they can afford it and they defer everything. But it's kind of like, if you think about it, they're totally different ways they pay people and how they account for everything. But the NIL with basketball and college sports, is getting way more like there's the higher earners, there's the blue bloods of football, baseball, all the revenue sports, basketball, and then you have like the middle tier group, and then you have the lower tier group. And all we've done in the last 3 years is just like widen the gap. And it's crazy to think like, I don't know how like a Alabama, Michigan, Texas, Georgia, like those teams, LSU, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, the amount of money that they have, USC that they spend, compared to like, it could be like one of those schools spends tenfold what a UCLA, these middle tier sort of, public schools have spent. I just think that it's going to be wider and wider until you get super lucky and win. And then those players that are on your team are now going to be like free agents every year.
Yeah.
And I mean, we have absolutely just deplorably ruined college athletics.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting times in the coming years for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric, we're coming up to the end, and this is a traditional question we ask all of our guests, and it is 3 tips you would provide to anyone who wants to take their career to the next level. It doesn't have to be 3. If you only have 2, that's fine, but up to 3.
I think making sure that you network appropriately, find the adequate mentors or people that you can rely on or ask questions of, especially like in our industry. I'm sure it's not dissimilar to any other industry. There's opportunities, whether it's associations that you can participate in or groups of people that semi-annually meet, or chat groups or things of that nature. I think it's having like expand your network of friends, family, mentors, opportunities, and not be willing to ask them a lot of questions. I think I've done a fair enough job of learning what other people do, how they do it, why they do it, to learn about how to best partner with allied associations or allied industries. I'm doing that hopefully with our new friends from San Manuel, Yamava, the Palms. The more I can learn from them, the more I can be a good partner, a good resource. I hate to say take advantage, but at least make sure that we incorporate ways to better engage everybody. I think that's super important. I think technology is crazy with this, like the AI and Chat GPT, and the more and more I utilize some of those tools, which I need to do better of, like, because I think there's more and more getting introduced. The more and more we can utilize that in our own businesses, depending, no matter what you do, whatever aspect of business that you're in, there will be questions you have that you should think about running them through some of those services, if not for anything, just to double check what you're doing makes sense. And some of that I've done, and I think it reaffirms my own belief that my gut is as good as what they say. And I'll lastly leave on this, that I think the advent of AI and technology has brought the money ball, the analytics, the revenue management, the metrics that we use for sales and marketing. I think golf are specifically, we're not the front runners of any sort of technology or management strategy or anything. We learn from those who just have more bandwidth, who have put more effort and energy and education behind the strategy thinkings, the big picture opportunities. But golf in Monarch, for example, we've embraced some of those learnings into our daily practice with analytics. And I think the more of that you can do for your own business, and then the more you can learn on how to apply that or learn from that, the learnings, I think the quicker you can make the best decisions. You can eliminate some of the worst decisions, and then you can really focus on the ones that are really going to set you apart, whether it's employee voice, the satisfaction of your employees, guest voice, the satisfaction of your guests, how you drive top line revenue, which is very important to any business, obviously, and then how you can flow that through the bottom line so that you can fund your capital, make your investors happy, reinvest all those monies back into the employees and the guests. and then it perpetuates you moving forward in the right direction. I think all those things are very important.
Fantastic. Thank you, Eric, for your time today and for sharing your insights and your background. It was very interesting and very nice to catch up with you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Check out more episodes at thenextlevelcareers.com.